This message is brought to you by House on the Rock Fellowship. We're a church that serves and cares for the Miami Valley region in Ohio. Before you continue, make sure to access the notes from our download section of our message page and have your Bible ready. Thank you for being our guest.
Good morning. It's so nice to see you. To our guests, a very special hello to you. Thank you for being here. It means a lot that you would tune in, that you'd join us this morning. My name is Paul. I'm a pastor and teacher here at House on the Rock. A few weeks ago, many of us might have dialed in to watch the inauguration of President Trump. And there were aspects that have been dropped into the national conversation that otherwise might never have made it to Facebook, your consciousness, or the national awareness. Part of that was a message that was delivered by the bishop of the Washington Diocese for the Episcopal Church, who spoke at the prayer service for President Trump's inauguration. Bishop Buddy was her name, and the part of her message that has catapulted her into the spotlight are the few closing comments she made at the end of her sermon. They caught my attention, mainly because so many people are commenting on them, but also anytime people start throwing Bible words around like mercy, I have a habit of tuning in. I want to read to you her closing comments. Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. As you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. They're gay, lesbian, transgender children, and Democratic, Republican, and independent families who fear for their lives. The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in our poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shift in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes. They're good neighbors. They're faithful members of our churches, mosques, synagogues, rudara, and temples. Have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away. Help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in our own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were once strangers in this land. May God grant us all the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, speak the truth in love, to walk humbly with one another and our God, for the good of all the people of this nation and the world. That was the Right Reverend Marianne Edgar Buddy, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington. I appreciated many of the things that she said. I struggled with many of the things that she said. Her and I would differ on big theological pieces. Some we have in common. I was very thankful of how respectful she was, how she spoke, how she presented herself. I would expect as much from a spiritual leader. I was disappointed with President Trump's response. But then again, he's not a spiritual leader. He's a CEO, and he chose to act like it. What caught my attention, and should catch ours today, was this plea: have mercy. Have mercy. What does that mean? And the reason it got my attention is because that's exactly what happens right in the middle of the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount, where we've been speaking and studying since the beginning of the year. The Lord describes, paints a portrait, if you will, of what his followers look like, how they act, how you could recognize them. They're poor. They're mourning. They grieve over what sin has done to our time, to our people, to humanity. They're powerless. They're meek. They're not influencers. They hunger for righteousness. Righteousness meaning they hunger for when things will be right, when relationships with God will be restored, when the king will be instilled. when relationships amongst humanity will be good again. And then smack dab, right in the middle, Jesus makes this statement, Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful. They, and only they, receive mercy. What does that mean? Blessed are the merciful. Only they, that's if you were to interpret it, it's an emphatic statement. Only those who give mercy will receive mercy. I thought today we could unpack that statement together. Because from Jesus' perspective, as he looks at his people, he sees a merciful people. What might that mean if I'm not merciful? To help us, we're going to look at another passage in Matthew. And would you turn there with me, please? This is in Matthew chapter 15. If you don't have a Bible or would like one, they're located in the seats in front of you. Some of the verses will be up on the screen. Ryan will bring those up for you to look at them. But we're going to look at a passage where a woman comes to Jesus and makes the exact same statement that Bishop Buddy did. Have mercy. And maybe in this passage, we can get a biblical understanding for what mercy is, how we can practice and live in that space. Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 15, I'm going to read verses 21 through 28. Matthew 15, 21 to 28. I'm going to read all the way through it. Then I'm going to take us back and we're going to look at some various parts of it. Okay? Again, Ryan has the verses up there on the screen if you want to read them from there. And Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon." But he did not answer her a word. His disciples came and begged him, saying, "Send her away. She's crying after us." Jesus answered, verse 24, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desired." And her daughter was healed instantly. Now, it doesn't matter how many times I've read this passage, and I've read it, not a lot, but a lot. There's just some parts in it that you're like, what's going on? Because Jesus is kind of a punk. You know, he doesn't act like you'd expect Jesus to act or say things or do things the way that you'd expect Jesus to do them. Here's a woman who's just asking for mercy, and he's really kind of, ugh. I do think Jesus is doing something very specific in this passage that should call all of us to attention. Okay? Let me walk us through this passage and see if it could help us understand what mercy is and how we need to be practicing and engaging. Right from the beginning, okay? Matthew chapter 15, verse 21. Let me make some observations. Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying to him. All right, so don't miss any of that. That's all important. Okay, that's all important. So Jesus has moved north. He's outside of Israel territory proper. He's out of the promised land. And he's walked some distance north to cities called Tyre and Sidon, which are along the coast in the Mediterranean area. This is pagan territory. This is Canaanite territory. This is Gentile, far north Samaritan territory. This is outside a Jew's comfort zone. This is outside of safety. This is where a Jew might say, we don't belong. And Matthew says, behold, like, check it out, notice, a Canaanite woman came crying to him. She's the other. She's the outsider. She's the outcast. What place does she have coming and speaking and asking of a Jewish rabbi? That's pretty consistent with Jesus, isn't it? If you slow down and you read Jesus' narratives, Jesus will speak to the ones that nobody speaks to. Jesus will engage the ones who nobody will engage with. Those whose society has forgotten and forsaken, those who Rome has failed, find their way to the feet of Jesus. She's the other. The one who doesn't think the way Jesus thinks, believes the way that Jesus believes, practices the way that Jesus practices. She's the other. Maybe that's important as we think about mercy. Where mercy is going to happen is an uncomfortable, non-safe space. Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. Have mercy. Now, we don't know what mercy means yet. We're still trying to gather some words and some ideas around it. But she calls upon Jesus as the Son of David. This is a royal title. This is his royal title. It's recognizing that Jesus is king and that she is now calling upon his kingdom. Rome, can't go to Rome. Israel, can't go to Israel, her own people. No, she is calling upon Jesus and who he is as king. Have mercy on me. My daughter is sick. My daughter needs help. That's helpful. If you start to unpack in big, thick theological books the idea of mercy, it will talk about the emotional misery of the person. Do you know what it is to have a sick child? Do you know what it is to have a sick spouse? Someone who's riddled with pain and suffering that's beyond your doing, beyond your healing. Can you imagine the groaning and the crying of this mother on behalf of her child? But she helps us even more in that she anchors her child's suffering and malady in a spiritual situation. There's a demon that's oppressing my child. So no matter what the fruit might be on that poisonous tree, and oftentimes we see in the Gospels when there's demonic oppression, it's having to do with some kind of physical malady that you would see. They're mute, it throws them down in seizures. There's some physical representation of what's going on, but the woman recognizes beyond that there's a spiritual problem there. This isn't just a physical thing. There's a spiritual crisis at play. And I'm asking the kingdom of Jesus to help. Have mercy on me. So, what is her request? If she's asking for mercy, she's asking Jesus. Here, mercy means heal my daughter. Isn't that what mercy, when she says have mercy, what's she asking Jesus to do? Heal my daughter. My daughter is beyond my saving, beyond my helping. What she's battling, I can't engage in. It's more than me. Will you help her, please? Please, will you help her? Does that fit within the Beatitudes? Does that fit in something that belongs inside of those blessings that Jesus lists out as he talks about the blessings that fall upon his people, who are the poor, who are mourning for those riddled by sin and grieving over death, those who are powerless, those who are hungering for righteousness, especially for society's vulnerable. The vulnerable meaning the widowed and the orphaned, the stranger, the poor. The merciful person is the one who helps the suffering of another. It helps the suffering of another. So what does Jesus do? What's his response? Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. Verse 23, but he did not answer her. Hold on to that. His disciples came and begged him, saying, send her away, for she's crying out after us. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. She came and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. He said, it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to dogs. She said, yes, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Okay. These are the three things that Jesus does. And now let me try to put it in context so we can see what he's doing. First thing he does is he ignores her. Flat out ignores her. That's what you would probably expect from a holy Jewish rabbi teacher, and a pagan woman comes up to him and engages him. Probably just best to ignore. Ignores her. Ignores her. That's what the disciples would expect him to do. Ignore her. Yeah. But she will not back down. She keeps leaning in. And the disciples are like, send her away. Send her away. She's embarrassing us. So Jesus goes from ignoring to insulating and creating distance. I have been sent for the lost sheep of Israel. He uses a theological, a biblical justification to create distance between the two of them. We don't belong together. I'm here to help Israel. That's why I've come. I'm here for the chosen ones, for the lost ones that are Israel. And you're an outsider. He uses a biblical promise. This is, word for word, his job description. He was sent to save Israel. That's why he's there. But he plays that Bible verse to create distance between him and the other, to justify the space. She persists more and more. Then he just flat out insults her. You're a dog. That's a common term that Jews would use to describe outsiders, pagans, Canaanites, half-breeds like Samaritans. You're a dog. You're just a dog. He dehumanizes her. He robs her of her dignity as an image bearer of God. He completely insults her. And if you can imagine, I can imagine, the disciples are probably like, yes, my boy. That's right. Get her out of here. Get her out of here. In that moment, I see Jesus calling his followers to account. Because the story doesn't stop there. We know that he makes the trip to Tyre and Sidon. We know that he intentionally is engaging in ministering in a pagan land. We know, because we've read the end of the story, that he is going to heal. He's going to do something, but the disciples don't know that. And in that moment, he plays every single card that would have been in their deck. That's a common thing for Jesus to call out the religious and call out their lack of mercy, their lack of caring, to ignore, to use biblical justifications to create space so you don't have to engage, to smear and dehumanize. an insult. It's very similar to when Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. We spent a whole summer in Luke chapter 10. We unpacked this story together. If you remember a little bit, let me just jog our memories. Jesus tells the story of a man who was traveling between Jerusalem and Jericho, and thieves came and robbed him and beat him and left him for dead on the side of the road. And the very first people that come upon him are who? The religious people, the God-fearing people. Priests and Levites who should have had a heartbeat for mercy and care and compassion. And do you remember what they do? They walk on the other side of the road. Can't let that chaos and sin infect me. I can't get caught up in that. So they're not going to look. They're going to distance. And if that wasn't enough, the nail that goes in the coffin, Jesus said, and it was a Samaritan, a dog in your estimation, who was the good neighbor, who came up, bandaged, healed, placed him upon his mule, took the wounded man to an inn, paid for his recovery and restoration. And Jesus says, that's a good neighbor. He was merciful. He was merciful. Do we have the same capacity? When we think about practicing what Jesus preaches, when Jesus says, my people are merciful, and then a woman come up after the first service, he says, Pastor Paul, you're stepping on my toes. I'm like, it's stepping on my toes. It steps on my toes. Jesus says, my people are merciful. My people help and see and engage in the suffering of others. Do we not suffer from those exact things that Jesus says? Do we not do exactly what Jesus did? While Jesus did it to teach and to confront the mercilessness of his disciples, because we know what he's about to do. I will ignore. I will not make eye contact. I will create distance. I will have Bible verse after Bible verse after Bible verse to justify my distancing myself from others. And while I try to stay off of Facebook entirely, it is very easy for me and all of us to jump on and dehumanize and ridicule and mock and maim the other, whose heart is yearning and crying for mercy. And completely forget the Father's example. You read through the Sermon on the Mount, it says things like this, and he makes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust alike. He's merciful. He's merciful. Yeah. So what does Jesus go on to do after she cries out after him? Jesus answers in verse 28. "O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire." And in this, I think we start to see and flesh out mercy. "O woman, great is your faith." So it's written from this place of surprise and exaltation. So imagine Jesus' posture. Imagine his face. Oh my goodness, woman. And he commends her. He celebrates her. He's gripped emotionally by her actions, by her cry, by her perseverance. He emotionally engages with her. "Oh, woman, great is your faith." But that's only half of mercy. Let it be done as you asked. Action. Action. Mercy, Jesus shows us, is when he ministers to her misery. He meets her need. Let it be done as you desire. Jesus ministers to her mercy, her misery. It is an emotion plus an action. So if you're a note taker, as I think about mercy for me, so mercy is when I minister my ministry to the other's misery. It's my ministry to the other person's misery. I see them. I engage with them. I do everything that I possibly can to engage and to help and alleviate their suffering and their pain. The merciful person sees the hurting person. I see you. I see you. Everybody is looking for someone looking for them. Everybody is looking for somebody who's looking for them. A child, an infant, does that. And we never grow out of that. I was talking with one of our members after church, and they had mentioned that they're going to go to a grandkids game. Watch the games. I love watching the kids play. I said, and they need to see you seeing them at the game. They need to see you, that you're there to see them, that you are there to recognize them, that the whole reason that you are there is because they are there. I see you. The merciful person sees, does not ignore. If you're going to ignore someone, unless you're like really, really angry at them, then you like do the silent treatment, but silent treatment is different than ignoring, right? Husbands and wives. Oh, to ignore someone, I don't see you. I don't even see you. I don't see you. The merciful person engages and moves into the space, whereas the disciples wanted to pull out of that space and move to a place of comfort and a place of safety. Jesus, no. We're moving into it. The merciful person moves into it. The merciful person will be touched by the story and the grieving and the suffering of others. They'll let themselves weep. They'll let themselves be uncomfortable. They'll let themselves shake a little bit. They'll let themselves get messy and dirty a little bit. They'll move into the space. So that with them, Jesus then moves into the space, who brings the ultimate healing and restoration. The merciful person engages and meets the need to the best of their capacity. It's practical. It's a practical thing. Heal my daughter. She not asking, okay? So one of the challenges that oftentimes people have when they read the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes specifically is they put it on this spiritual platitude. It's a spiritual platitude. It's a spiritual plateau talking about spiritual things. Sermon on the Mount is boots on the ground. If you're hungering for righteousness, you want people restored. If you are merciful, you're meeting needs, physical needs, financial needs, relational needs, emotional, mental needs. You are meeting people where they are. Jesus heals her. That's what she's asking for. She's not asking for her sins to be forgiven. She's not asking to find a space at the altar. She's asking that her daughter be put back together again. That's what she's asking for. That's mercy. Are there those other things? Sure. Relief, then restoration. We talked about that last week. Relief, then restoration. Is this not the center of our faith? It's the center of the Beatitudes. If you know anything about Hebrew literature, they like to put the big idea right in the middle. Is this not are we not to be a people of mercy? People who help. We're helpful. Be helpful. This is echoed in 1 John chapter 3, verse 16 and 17. Make sure you have 1 John, not the Gospel of John. There are more than one books in the Bible that have John in the title. So 1 John is really close to the very end of the Bible. You get to Revelation, you go four books to the right, you get to 1 John. 1 John chapter 3, 16 and 17, talking about how we are to be a merciful people. and really calls us out a little bit. 1 John chapter 3, 16 and 17. By this we know love. Okay, how do we know what love is? Let's define love. What is love? This is how I know what love is. He laid down his life for us. That's how I know what love is. The sacrificial gift of Jesus. That's love. And we ought to lay down our lives for others. It's to be reciprocated. We love because he first loved us. That's love. But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word and talk, but in deed and in truth. Okay, let's read verse 17 again. If anyone has the world's goods. Okay, help me out. What do you think he's talking about? What's the world's goods? What do you got? Money, food, what else? Shelter, what else? What is it? Time, clothing, the things that sustain human flourishing, that provide for human flourishing, right? I need food, I need shelter, I need relationships. World's goods. You got the tangibles, the touchables. Not talking about the spirituals. Does the world offer spiritual goods? No, the world does not offer spiritual goods. These are the world's goods, okay? Physical things, so that I can eat, so that I can survive. Okay, if you have those things and you see a brother needs them and you harden your heart, how could you honestly say that the love of Christ abides in you? Well, maybe they don't deserve it. Well, maybe they were stupid and they got themselves in this mess. So maybe they should just sit in their pain right now until they're sorry. That's not what it says, is it? For he makes the rain fall on the just and the unjust alike. If you see someone, if you see a brother specifically who needs help and you harden your heart to them, and now it's becoming a spiritual crisis. Now it's turning into a spiritual disease. Your conscience is searing. Your heart is getting hard. You harden your heart to them. How could you honestly think that the love of Jesus is inside of you? So let's love with words and deeds and actions of mercy. Yeah. In deed and in truth. You don't have to separate them. Sometimes we make the mistake of thinking, well, either we're going to be holy and tell the truth, or, we'll be tolerant and merciful. No, you can do both. You can deed and truth. Deed and truth. Another place where Jesus speaks to this priority through the Apostle Paul, the book of Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, big theological book, huge themes, but the application of how we live out salvation towards the end of this letter is convicting. Romans chapter 12, I'm going to read verses 3 down through 8. 3 to 8, he's going to unpack how the grace of God works out in our midst in different ways. We have different gifts, different capacities. But listen how there are some specific ways that the Spirit will infuse mercy giving into the local church. Romans chapter 12, verses 3 to 8. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function, so we, though many, are one body in Christ. And individually we are members of one another. So he describes a healthy fellowship, a church like a human body. Lots of different parts, pieces, members, all working together. Having gifts, and he's going to unpack some of those, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let's use them. If prophecy, in proportion to your faith. If service, in our serving. The one who teaches, in his teaching. The one who exhorts, in his exhortation. The one who contributes, in his generosity. The one who leads, with zeal. The one who does acts of mercy, with cheerfulness. Now, I've often gone to this passage as an affirmation to myself when I was struggling with calling and ministry. And I have to remind myself, listen, Apostle Paul, I'm working on humility. I'm getting pretty good at it. Paul, don't forget that the Spirit put gifts in you to grow the church. And I would focus on these ones: prophecy, teaching, and leading. Okay? You think about some of the things, what does a pastor do? Prophecy. What's prophecy? Prophecy means to speak God's message to God's people, God's way. That's prophecy. Prophecy does not mean, today you will drive through the roundabout and have dinner at the Caroline. That's not, no. Today the Chiefs will score this many and the Eagles will score that many. That's not what prophecy, no. Very, very rarely do you see that expression of prophecy. Prophecy simply means I'm going to speak God's message to God's people, God's way. Okay? Okay? Teaching. That's a big deal. Leading. Those are really important. Preaching and teaching and leading, those are important. But 4 of the 7 are often the overlooked, unconsidered, most merciful gifts in the church, expressions of mercy. Serving. Exhortation. Or encouraging people to not quit. Hey, let's keep going. Giving, contributing financially. And then flat out he says it, acts of mercy. There is an abundance of grace poured upon the church for the purpose of being merciful to those around, to alleviating the suffering and engaging in seeing the needs of those around. It will raise up above and beyond. Everyone's called to be merciful. Those who serve and contribute and give and do mercy, that see others. This is so significant in a healthy church. Within a local church, there are 2 specific offices ordained by the Spirit for the care and flourishing of a local church. One of them is an elder. Those who are spiritually charged to care for and shepherd the well-being of the church. Okay? House on the Rock, we have 3 elders. Always praying for and looking for more. But there's a second office. Do you know what it is? Anyone know? The deacon. Literally, the term means servant. The one who serves. A specific formal office exists to elevate the Spirit's priority that we are a people that serve. We're a serving people, a mercy-giving people. You see the prototype of this idea in Acts chapter 6. The apostles are praying and teaching and doing those spiritual things that are so important for the life of the church. But there's this issue. Greek widows aren't receiving the care that they need. Jewish widows are getting help. Greek widows aren't. And the church brings this issue to the elders, to the apostles. And the apostles are like, all right, find amongst you 6, 7 spiritual individuals that we can lay this on. You pick them, we'll lay hands on them, and then we'll release them to go get this done. Because this is important. This is important. It's really hard to feed someone spiritually if they're starving physically. It just is. It's a fact. And so they do. And they appoint and they raise. The Apostle Paul will grab a hold of this and codify this idea in his letters. Like 1 Timothy chapter 3, he talks about the descriptions of an elder, and then he talks about the qualifications and the descriptions of a deacon. The ones who formally are called to carry the ministry of mercy to the church. This is so vital. We as elders in our elders meetings have begun studying and praying over this because I believe that House on the Rock needs to step into and recognize deacons as a gift and see deacons instilled here at House on the Rock. We started unpacking, and you do some of the historical work into the ministry of deacons, that when the Third Reich was at its height, Hitler did a hunt for deacons to remove and kill deacons. Emperors were known, governors in the Roman Empire were known to send out watch lists for the deacons of the Christian churches. Why? Because the deacons wouldn't stop serving, wouldn't stop helping, wouldn't stop giving, wouldn't stop ministering to those who are sick. They were elevating the ministry of Jesus where people were really at on practical terms. Continue to pray for us through this season that come, not too distant future. We would be laying our hands on deacons, men and women in our church family, who elevate the value of serving and caring and contributing and ministering to the sick, the suffering, and the miserable in our midst. You can do both. Mercy is not tolerance. Mercy is ministry to the misery of others. It's emotion and it's acting. It's both. When I was gathering, research and studying and prepping for this time this morning, I was reading some messages and sermons by other pastors and theologians, and one guy highlighted this story, and I just kind of hit me where I was at. He was an English pastor and a writer who was talking about this English village in the 19th century. Small, rural community. And the vicar, the local pastor, was walking around town, checking in with people. And he noticed that in the town square, everyone had gathered around this one particular man. Accident had happened and his horse was killed. This is the man's well-being. This is how the man lives, his livelihood. And everyone, because it's a small town, was very sorry, very apologetic. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this happened. I'm so sorry that this happens. Man's suffering. This is his horse. This is his livelihood. This is his financial security. I'm so sorry. But then people started to walk away. And so this English pastor is like, I'm sorry, 5 pounds worth. Takes out a hat, puts in a note, starts to pass the hat. So we'll be sorry, won't we? But will we really give? Will we really help? Will we really be generous and merciful? We're not merciful into seeing and acting come together. There are some things that I agree with what Bishop Buddy said. There are some things I seriously disagree on what Bishop Buddy said. But one of the issues that I have was that her message was right, have mercy, but the audience was wrong. The audience was wrong. The audience, the answer to the mercy question isn't the government. It's not political. It's not the empire of the United States. It's the kingdom of Jesus Christ. That's the call. Church, be merciful. You be merciful. That's the call. I'm thankful for individuals like on our Hope team who are always putting mercy projects and opportunities in front of us. Whether it's like this last Thursday at the Mercy Mission House in Sydney, bringing food to people who need food. Serving at Shoes for Shoeless, blessing boxes throughout the community where we provide food. Some of us who stock those boxes, we are amazed every single time we go back. It's bone dry. It's empty. People are going there for food. They need food. Continue to engage with those things. Continue to look for opportunities. Create margin in your schedule. Create margin in your wallet. Just have a gift card with you that you can just, if the Spirit's prompting, here's a $20 gift card. Here's a $20 gift card. What if they don't deserve it? Rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. Who are you to decide if they deserve it or not? I'm going to ask the artist to come up, please. Blessed are the merciful. They alone receive mercy. Let us not commit the sins that Jesus called the disciples out on. Let us not ignore. Let us not insulate. Let us not insult. Let's see. Let's lean in. Let's care. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and we'd love for the journey to continue. If you're a guest, would you consider reaching out to us? We would love to come alongside and encourage you in any way that we can. If you're someone who's joined us today and you are desperately reaching to find hope wherever you can, again, Jesus came that we would find hope. You can find hope today. If you want to send us a short note, a member of our Hope team would reach out quickly, promptly, to come alongside and see what we can do to encourage you in whatever storm you might find yourself in. That's why Jesus came, and that's why we're here. Jesus said there's 2 ways to live your life, and a wise man, a wise woman builds their life on Jesus' instructions. God bless.